just making sure once him and I get seated, it's...
Any way we can slide this table a little bit and get a better angle, or get y'all a little further back?
Whatever you think. It's live going out. All right. All right, if you can find a seat. What's the going joke? This isn't church, so if you want to scoot up forward, but if it's because of personal reasons, you can stay back. It's all good. Just welcomed. I don't bite. You can come up if you want to. All right, so I'm excited to talk tonight. We actually just, we're going to do it a little bit of a conversation because, well, first of all, a lot of real estate can be very technical. What we're going to talk about is a technical strategy, but I want to I think it's going to help demystify it too. So maybe we can do that some. So, Justin, we're going to invite you on up here. Come on, join me up here, man. So Justin Allen, if you've heard of him thus far, a lot of you guys know of him. He runs the REIA on the Mississippi Gulf Coast in Gulfport. Broker for how many years?
Next year, 16, 17.
All right, 16, 17 years as a broker in the state of Mississippi. You've been investing. Did you invest before becoming a broker?
Yeah, 96.
Since 96, he's been investing. And how soon into your investing world, career, all of getting into the world of real estate, did you start doing SubTo deals?
1 year.
1 year into it. Okay, cool. So we're going to dive into some stuff. One, I wanted to kind of give you some background with him. So I want to get started, but before I do, I want to understand, because we want to apply this to very, like in a helpful way. So we want to know who's in the room. Who in here has done a SubTo deal? Can you raise your hand? Okay. All right, so about 8 to 10 people. Who here has no idea what a SubTo deal, if you care to answer, because this will help us. Okay, a handful of you, okay. So.
Who's scared of doing a SubTo deal? Everybody
else?
else?
Actually, to be honest, I've reached out to Mr. Robert Reed because I'm like, I'm going to mess this up. I'm bound to trip my way into this one. And but I wanted to do it. So for those of you who don't know my story, I got into the real estate industry in 2014, did my first deal in 2015, used some cash, got into a cheap deal as a live-in flip, used a line of credit from that deal to do another flip, and then I started wholesaling. And then I was like, I can't get a loan because I had just quit my job. I went all in. I couldn't use bank products, so it's not lendable. And so I had to learn really quickly the creative side of finding, real estate deals and buying them. Because who here would do more real estate deals if they had access to more money? Raise your hand.
Cheap money.
Cheap money. Oh, you got very specific. Cheap money.
Cheap money.
I'm going to tell my dog at home to raise his paws because we're going to be going all in, right? So I got started in real estate when the market has been on an upswing, right? Since 2014, the market has been doing a lot better, right? And so I've managed to do over 100 deals because I've learned creative ways to get into real estate that didn't require me to go get that bank loan because I couldn't get one, right? So many people, when you can't get it, it forces you to find another option, right? Like innovation, necessity is the mother of innovation, right? So I want to say this, don't let the money part be an excuse. I hear that way too often. When the only thing you have in your tool belt is a hammer or the ability to buy a property with, a bank loan, then everything has to look like a nail. But, when you have other tools in your tool belt, you can buy more properties. So let's start off with this.
Something I kind of want to add on to that too, when you were saying that. I think the reason why I was doing SubTo was the same reason you were. I didn't have any cash when I started. I was wholesaling, and I started realizing really fast that I was wholesaling deals that I could have made 20, 30 grand on. I was selling for 5, right? But I didn't know the tool. I didn't have all the tools in my tool belt. I just had a wholesaling tool in my tool belt. So I think I'll tell you the first time I heard of SubTo is I went to a New Orleans seminar called the Wild, Wonderful Women of Real Estate for 2 days.
Someone did really good marketing that.
They went national with it. It was a lot of great speakers, but I never heard of SubTo. I never heard of short sale. I never heard of all these other tools other than just wholesaling and buying cash and flipping and or owner finance. So once I started realizing that, then I started seeing that there was a lot more opportunity to do that. But I think anybody in here, so how many cash buyers do we have that buy cash? How many people that have zero cash? How many people have no money?
So
You're the people that can bypass all the other ones in a heartbeat. And there's a reason why I say this, because if you have cash, it's a detriment. I'm telling you right now, it is a detriment if you have cash. It sounds crazy.
I agree with you.
But the more you don't use your own money, the more creative you can be and you should be. And
Your deals
forcing,
become.
Oh, by far, because you
spend other people's money differently.
All my cash.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Spend all my cash. I'm going to do that for you.
But I'm telling you right now,
Hey,
because
Bob,
it forces you.
spend all your money with me. Okay? Solving that problem. I solve problems all day long. I'm done here.
But what's funny was I didn't even realize it until someone else had mentioned to me. There was an appraiser in our group that had cash and built up over several period of years, and she had started investing basically the same week I did. And 2 or 3 years go by, and she said, I have no idea. I was doing the same amount of deals you were, but you just surpassed me in the amount of ways you did deals and everything else. And she said, it took me a while to figure it out, but she said, the reason why is that I had cash and you didn't, and it was forcing you to be creative. And I didn't think about it that way, but that's exactly what it was. So the moment you stop using your own money, the more creative it's going to force you to do deals. And what's funny is, was this the last time you worked with the REIA or the time before when I was putting a deal up on the board and we were running through it? And remember it was saying, okay, how many people would buy it at this, right?
Right.
And we kept going up and going up and going up, and like astronomically, right?
Right.
To where you would, and I think it was maybe more than what the property was worth, and you would still do the deal if you had a creative tool in your belt. No risk, and you still make $5 grand on the deal, and you pay more for it, or you get it under contract, or you figure out the deal more than what it was worth.
Yeah, so we basically put a deal on the board and we said, okay,
It was a real deal.
a real deal, at this amount, who would buy it? And people raised their hand, right? Okay, let's change, raise this number, let's bump it up from 70,000 to 75. Okay, who would still buy it? And they're like, okay, maybe me, right? And the number kept dwindling the further we got up. Well, toward the end, I think you and I were the only ones still willing to buy, but here's the thing, it became, because I started looking at my tool belt, I'm like, if I could buy it like this, I'd still buy it. Now, I'm not paying cash and paying stupid prices, but it just varies my tools.
Yeah,
So, and I agree, because my very first deal, I put all my money in the property, and then I used a line of credit against that property to use that, to be able to access that money to do other deals. When I started using that line of credit, it was that money was burning my pocket. But the minute I told myself that line of credit is no longer available for me, all of a sudden I found private money. Or I found, I got creative and started buying creative deals. Or doing, subject to deals, or owner finance, or bond for deed. Because it forced me to get creative and to go learn. And here's the thing. There's nothing that I'm doing that any of you couldn't do, because all of the information is out there on the internet, right? Honestly, you can't outrun all the education on the internet in any, you really just can't. It's just too much, maybe, probably.
You don't even have to go see the Wild Wonderful Women anymore.
Yeah, you don't have to go track them down.
If you search that on YouTube now, you probably get different results.
Yeah, don't do that. So why, tell me about your first subject to deal.
It was a military couple in Ocean Springs that I remember I was nervous the first time I kind of just said, hey, why don't I just, do it this way? It's called a subject to transaction, and I basically take over your payments. And they were like, sure, okay. And I was like, now what do I do? It's like, I got to go find somebody to do paperwork now, because now
I'll be right back. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. But of course you're telling the seller that, hey, I'll get back to you, we'll do the paperwork, and we'll figure it out. So, come to find out, no one else knew what subject twos were. So then I had to go, let me back up. So this is what I used to do as a new investor. So anytime I wholesale a deal to, I was just telling you, anytime I wholesale a deal to an investor, part of the deal was I got access to their library, of information, all their courses. So I didn't have to go pay for it.
You mean like if they took a training somewhere, or
Yeah,
like,
they
or
would
like
buy
a
a
book?
course, they did thousands
Are you talking
of
like
hours.
CDs?
Yeah.
Are you talking
They would
8
take-
tracks?
We're
Talk to me
talking
about
cassettes.
cassettes.
I'm not going back to 8 tracks.
Okay.
Cassettes, but mostly CDs, books, that kind of stuff, and I just had access to it. So,
Cool. So that nice bartering tip, I didn't know that.
yeah. So then, what I would do is I wouldn't wholesale to the same investor. I'd go find another one with different library, right? So you would just start accumulating a lot of just boxes of stuff in storage that are just.
Do they give them to, or they just, or you?
No, you just go to
make
the house and
copies?
say like, hey, I'm going to be grabbing this, this, and this, and I just write it down and like, hey, I'll give it back to you in a month, and they're cool with it.
So, Mr. Robert Reed back there, when we first started pitting, I started learning from him. He's been in the business for a good while. He said, you need to go find on eBay
Yeah.
these guys and their old cassette programs.
Yeah.
I legit bought one and had to go buy something to play the cassette to listen to it. I kid you not. And then I found it on YouTube, so I learned. I bypassed that product. There's nothing new under the sun.
No.
Subject to is really popular right now, but it's been around for a while because obviously you've been doing it for 20 years now or so.
Yeah.
Okay, so that first deal, you were learning from that because you were trying to get answers on how to do these new types of deals?
Yeah, so I talked to them, and basically I knew that somebody had went to the Wild Wonderful Women, with me. There was about a carload of us, so 6 or 8 of us, and one of them had bought
The
program, and asked to borrow. I didn't even have a wholesale to him, and asked to borrow, and he said sure. And I was just going through it like, all night, trying to figure out the paperwork and the language and everything else, and just trying to not trip over
Figuring it out
myself.
on the fly.
Yeah, exactly. And because I think the information stuck really well when you actually have a deal in the pipeline that you have to go do like the next day.
Well, no, the rubber's hitting the road.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
like, money's on the line here versus let me just store that away
Yeah, in
or
theory.
theory. No, that's critical because a lot of this stuff, and especially with the subject to, there's a lot of moving parts paperwork wise. It's honestly really going to matter within the moment what you're going to need.
What's funny to me is that I think on looking back, I thought it was super complicated. It's really not. I would say it's the least complicated because
Yeah, right.
So I've got basically, 6 or 8 pages, 3-page contract, and a deed. That's it, and you can do the deal the next day.
So I'm going to share this. You said I could put it on the web.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share this on the website. So so you can download it. So it'll be a PDF on the website. So if you look up Northshore REIA.com.
Do you have to be a member to see it?
No, we're free here, man. No memberships here. So
we have a very select few. So I don't do. That's why I say, you want to come do subject to a presentation? I was like, I don't do presentations. So we're just going to do it off the fly. Because I run the REIA on Biloxi, and we just kind of do more of an organic conversation with the crowd and ask questions, and it's more interactive.
Because we're definitely going to have you guys be able to ask questions here. But so this is one of the things I think most people underestimate with the subject to. So this is a normal. Do you use this type of contract on other deals?
No.
So this is a very specific subject to contract.
I open my computer. It's got subject to folder, and just download it and print it off.
Got it. So he's built out his paperwork. I do that similarly, but it's very similar to my current contracts. But it's built for the creative side. Look, if I'm doing a bond for deed, I've got another one saved as a bond for deed.
Yeah.
If I'm doing a seller financing deal, I've got another one saved because anytime you're doing a deal one time, do it in a manner that you can help thank your future, your future self's going to thank you, right?
I literally had to go in and change these because a lot of the dates were 2003. Because it's the same paperwork. It's the exact same. I've been doing it. It's like having to change.
So set those things up. Okay, so when you first got into it, you went through the courses.
Yep.
Did you go through an attorney to have them look through it?
I didn't. I went. Well, what I did is I went to find a deed that I had just done in the same county, and then just rewrote it. And then the thing, if you're going to write your own deed, is that you're going to make sure that the legal description is perfect, as the deed before. So all I needed to know was I needed to have the deed that they had signed to kind of work from, and that's the only thing I really needed. And other than a mortgage statement to know what terms were on the loan, because if you're taking a property subject to, you need to know what you're taking it subject to.
Very
Terms,
important.
How long are they into the process of paying it down? What kind of interest rate it is, if it's PITI. If there's any other liens. The only thing that I didn't do on the first 2 or 3, it didn't bite me, but I just do title work. Just to make sure there's no anything weird or strange when I go to sell it that I'll have to deal with later on.
So the premise of a subject to transaction, whenever we're talking about this is a strategy to buy a house. You could technically sell subject to.
I say acquire a house.
Yeah, acquire. We're doing some acquisition stuff here, but so it's a way to buy a property. Very rarely you don't really want to sell on a subject to. So
it depends on the terms.
It depends on the terms.
If the terms are 8%, that's going to be a short-term deal based on how much principal.
The terms of the mortgage that you're buying,
exactly.
that you're taking over. So this is really important. Subject to is it's getting to be a very hot topic right now. And I think many people, first of all, when they get into it, I ask them, what type of mortgage have you looked into the mortgage that you're taking over? Well, I saw a statement. I said, no, have you looked into the actual mortgage itself? And I can tell you, I've come into a lot of what's called an adjustable rate mortgage, where the mortgage will have a part of it that will say, hey, starting on this date, the interest rate will range from this amount to this amount. Well, I thought I was getting into an 8% loan. Well, now you're getting in between a 8 to 15% loan. Does that change the deal for you? Right? So, last month you guys were here at Mr. Leon. He always says this. He says if there's two houses right next door to each other, built by the same builder, nothing different with them, the difference between one being a good deal and the other not being a good deal is terms, right? So if I've got two mortgages that I'm, started on the same day, what is going to make them different? So I'm going to look for a few things. Is this a 30-year mortgage? Or is this a 15-year mortgage, right? What's the difference between that? They're pinning more away to principal with that 15 year. It's a more aggressive pay down, right? Understanding kind of, okay, it's just a different style loan. Most people do a 30-year, okay? Whenever you start a mortgage, there's a life of that mortgage over 30 years, where in the beginning, you're paying a heavier amount towards interest, right? You guys familiar with this? The beginning of part of a loan. Is it like year 14 or something like that?
That's what I was going to say.
Year
14.
The lender in the room. Around year 14, it goes over the, kind of the hump to where you're paying more towards principal than interest. So, if I meet an owner and they've been in this house for 16 years, what should trigger in my mind?
Principal paid.
Principal. They're pitting more. I'm going to be pitting more towards principal. But I want to make sure, hey, did they refinance in that time? Is this the original mortgage from 16 years ago? Okay, I'm going to ask some of these qualifying questions. I'm going to find out what's the interest rate on the loan. And then I'm going to ask, that interest rate, I want to make sure, is it adjustable? I want to look through some of those things. If you've never looked at a mortgage before, I'm not asking you to be a professional title examiner through those things, but you need to know what you're taking over. The same way you would do an inspection on a house or you'd go walk through a house, you need to know what you're getting into. Because this is what I see a problem with subject 2 is people are just taking over anything and not doing their due diligence, and they're going to be calling me when they're up a creek without a paddle, right? It's happened. I had a guy who got excited about real estate investing, bought multiple houses, and then called me when the bank was, knocking on the door, right? So understand that, yes, these things are exciting. You can get into these things, but you need to do your due diligence. So, okay, the interest rates, the life of the loan, how long is the term? The other thing is you want to check and see, do you care if it's the person who services the loan, if it's a VA loan, FHA loan? Is there any type of loan that you do not want to take over? This is an important question.
The only time that I've really seen a subject to kind of really get weird is that you're taking over someone else's loan, that the loan is with a local bank, and they are tied into the local bank. They work there. They are affiliated with the bank somehow, have a spouse that works there, something like that. And the conversation comes up. Another one is divorce. Divorce on a subject to can be one that can go off the rails, and the bank can call the loan due. So
Okay.
when I say
Explain
divorce, it has nothing to do with the actual divorce. It has to do with one of the spouses calling the mortgage company and say, did you know we sold that house 3 years ago? Because they want out of the deal, right? They don't want split from their other spouse. Doesn't matter if it's man or woman.
They're just
They
being
just-
professional crap stirrers.
Yeah, that's all they're doing. They're stirring the drama. Now,
Okay, so let's explain why that would be a problem, and dive into a second about the debate on that.
okay, so the bank, I think the scariest thing for people is that they think the bank is going to call the loan due, which very rarely that happens. It does
What
happen.
does that mean? What does it mean when a bank?
So, and it just about every mortgage there's a due on sale clause. So the due on sale clause gives the bank the right to call the loan due if title transfers, the deed transfers, right? And the reason for it is that if they have money out at 3% and today's rates are at 6%, they want to call that money back out in 3% and loan it back out in 6%. Now it's never really the opposite. They're never really have a loan out at 9% and they're wanting to bring that in and loan it back out at today's rates.
So, for example, if the bank reserves the right, this is why a mortgage is 30 pages long, they have all these clauses in there. The bank reserves the right, if they notice XYZ happening, there's some stipulations in the mortgage of what that looks like. They can then send a letter and say, you need to expedite the payment of this loan. Well, hey, I'm on year 3 of a 30-year loan. I don't care. I have the right to call this the full rest of the amount of the loan due. And that's what investors are afraid of, because they're like, I'm paying this over time. I don't have that money, right? You got a phone call, I need $100,000 for the rest of this. Like, you start freaking out, right? First of all, this could happen on a bond for deed. Okay, so if you buy a house on an installment plan, this could happen if you file an option. I believe they can call it due. So if you do a lease option and they file it with public record, it's most commonly associated with the subject to method. Because basically, if the bank sees that the new owner has been recorded in title, they're like, hey, something's awry. They can call the loan due. So what does that look like? Pat just had that happen. So Pat does the REIA with him.
Yeah, so give you an idea of kind of another weird scenario. With local bank again, and he had the seller on this particular property had his loan, another property he had going to foreclosure. I think he had like some kind of commercial property, whatever, and it was all kind of intertwined with the same bank. So when they saw that property going to foreclosure or trying to go into foreclosure, they were just looking at everything, and then they pulled up records and saw that the deed had transferred. Now, Pat already had the property up for sale and it was under contract to sell it. So it's really not even an issue. He just said, hey, we've already got it up for sale and it's under contract. He never heard from him again.
So do you have a ballpark idea of how many subject to deals you've done and how many have been called due?
I've only had one being called due. It's probably close to 100.
So 100 subject to deals and only one. Here's the thing is, there is not a due on sale department at a bank. There's not.
It's normally human interaction.
It's usually someone who raises the red flag.
And that's what happened about the divorce. There's one had called and said,
he did this thing.
yeah, he did this thing, and
you should know about it.
yeah.
So here's the thing is, a lot of times banks are good because they see the payment being made.
Yeah, the banks don't want to own the property.
They don't
No.
want to own, yeah, so the
Sure.
lender in the room from a local bank. Mr. Robert Reed, thank you for moving up.
Whenever you take over a subject to, you explain to the seller
Everything. Totally transparent.
So let's go
that
through.
if they call the lender and screw your deal up,
It's
your
on them.
credit gets screwed.
It's on them.
Yours?
Yeah. Well, and they knew that at the time,
I
but
know.
then the spouse didn't care.
Does your credit get screwed up?
Yeah. Well, no, of course, and well,
No.
yeah.
You're not on the line.
So let's
They're only screwing
explain,
themselves.
let's get 30,000 feet in the air. What is a subject to from start to finish? And then let's talk about pitching it to a seller.
Yeah.
So the subject to deals, they come to me plenty of different ways. So a lot of times they come to me when someone's juggling 2 mortgages and they're like, I can't sell this house for whatever reason. And they're like, I can't continue to juggle 2 payments. Maybe it's sometimes where they either have little to no equity in the house. There's been a number of reasons people come to me with this.
It probably works. I'd say it works. I think what's funny to me is that when you look at the traditional investor, especially the first 5 years, the only thing they really look at are ugly houses that need a lot of work. Subject to works perfectly on homes that need 0 work. That's what I love about it. There's no contractors to deal with. They're already moving ready. And a lot of times, I'm kind of more known for properties that I'll have the seller pay the next 3-4 months. So it gives me after they move out. So it gives me 3-4 months to put in a lease option tenant buyer, put it on the market, do whatever I want to do with it without actually having to eat the note.
Let's jump into that in a second. So we've got, for some reason, they cannot continue to pay the payments themselves, right? Maybe they're current, maybe they're not current on the payment, okay? It varies by situation. So then they find out that you're a local real estate solution provider. If you're not telling people that you're providing solutions for real estate problems, they're not going to say, we were looking for a subject to buyer. Like, they're not going to say that. They're going to say, wait, I have a friend who has a problem, who doesn't know what to do about this, whatever. So people need to know what you do, so somehow they come to you, right? And at this point, we're going to go over a second about the conversation when we had with the seller, but we're going to have a conversation with the seller, and we're going to explain to them what's going on. We're going to go over that here in a second. And then let's just say they say, yep, let's do that. That is when we're going to go ahead, and the next step is the paperwork part.
Yep.
Okay? So do you do a purchase agreement for this, or do you just go straight to the notary, to the title company? What is your process?
I do several different types of paperwork. The one that I printed off for Courtney is basically just a purchase and sale, and I'm going to normally in today's market put it on the market and sell it in,
Sure.
I would say 6 months, but give me 6 days now.
Sure. So we'll talk about some exit strategy options
But
with
that's the
subject
different
to.
thing. So what I do.
Depends on what you're doing with it.
Yeah, normally, and if we went in this last 6 months, I would do option paperwork, I would do subject to paperwork, I would do purchase and sale agreement, I would do 4 or 5 different ways, but I really don't know what my exit's going to be.
You're
I
doing
think I know what my
paperwork
exit
for
is.
all of your options.
All of the exit. I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I know what I'm going to do, but that's not necessarily always the best thing. Until I find the right buyer for the right price. Or I think a lot of times people, as wholesalers, if you had this tool in your tool belt, you could get a bigger wholesale fee if you were wholesaling subject twos. The first deal we were talking about, I wholesaled that subject to because it came with financing. It's worth more.
So this is where we're going to differ some, and we can continue through the progress of it. But I'm not a fan of wholesaling subject to.
Well, it's not necessarily you're doing all the paperwork, but it's basically you're prepping the seller
Sure.
to do the subject to paperwork with your end buyer, which is going to be the next investment if they go that route.
So one of the reasons here is I'm having a conversation with the seller, and we can dive in that here. But let's say, okay, we do the paperwork, and then there's a lot of other things that need to be tackled. We're going to go through that in a second. Insurance needs to be tackled properly. Where the statements are going needs to be tackled properly. And then, here's the thing is, I don't do all of my exit strategies with subject twos.
Yeah.
I'm very specific on my exit strategy, so we're going to jump all into all of that. So, but that's kind of the life of it. Someone has a problem, they come to me, we talk about this being an option, we do the paperwork, and then at that point we align everything, like I said, the insurance, the statements with the bank, all this stuff, to get it to where it's now all, where I can move forward controlling the property, okay? And then we're going to do the transaction, and then from there I do my exit strategy, whatever it is. So, we kind of talked about some reasons of why people would sell subject to. Let's go ahead and talk about the conversation we have with sellers whenever we're pitching them a subject to deal. And this is important because a lot of people think no one's going to allow you to just start taking over their mortgage payments. So he does this. So he does it one way and I do it differently. So I want to give you both perspectives. He puts title into his own name.
No.
Not your name. Not you put it into a trust.
No.
No, you do an LLC. What do you do?
I do an LLC.
Okay, you move title from the owner to the new property.
Yeah.
And then, so I don't personally do that. I do it as a bond for deed hybrid. That's my personal level with them. Every now and then, I will put the property into, like, basically have it to where the owner's name on record of the property will change. Okay? So he has it where it changes. I sometimes do that. I sometimes don't do that. But, so here's the thing is, think about that. Bob, you come to me and I've got a problem, and I say, you come to me and say, hey Courtney, I can keep paying that mortgage, but I'm going to put the property in my name. I'll be like, and the mortgage stays in my name. Does anyone say, how am I going to tell someone to do that and get them to agree?
That's because you wouldn't do it. Doesn't mean that they wouldn't do it.
Yes. Okay. Also, that's actually very critical. You're not in distress.
Yeah.
This is actually one of the easiest things I often get people to agree to. Believe it or not. It's how you pitch it.
Yep.
If you start saying, hey, I'm going to do this subject to transaction where I'm going to take over your mortgage that has a 360 payments that I'm going to take them over and do this. And they're like, what? But instead, we're going to say something like,
I'm just going to take over your payments, but depending on the equity, if they've got equity, I don't mention the equity just comes to me. But if they don't have any equity, I need them to sweeten the pot somehow. And they understand that. Let's say if they have 10 grand, perfect example was a house I bought in Ocean Springs where I think it was worth 100 to 109 in that range, and they're like 96.
that's getting tight.
That's tight. So I was the third investor that they had solved. So I had solved the problem.
Well, real quick. So 109, it's worth ARV 109,
Yeah.
96 on the mortgage. What condition was it in?
97%. Great.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
a few little touch-ups.
Oh, very
Yeah,
little
very
money,
little.
$1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, $1,000 to get it ready to go. How many of you could do that deal as a cash buyer? Right? No, I don't.
Not at 90.
Yeah.
Probably not at 80. Right?
Right.
I mean, it just doesn't work.
So understand. Let's hear this deal out and understand why cash is not always key.
No. So in this particular one, I told them that since they didn't have a lot of equity as an investor, if I'm going to pay my bills, if I'm going to stay in business, I need to have some type of profit on the back end. So what I need to do was I could do a subject to transaction. So what that means is that the loan stays in your name, I make the payments, but I also get the equity when I sell the property. So the loan stays in your name and the deed transfers to me. And they're like, okay. I said, well, we still have a problem with equity. But what they hadn't realized is when I go through a home, normally a pretty home, as they're showing me around, I'm earmarking big screen TV, this in the backyard, jet ski out here, those kind of things. Because I know, you know where I'm going with this.
Yes.
Because those are the things I'm going to sweeten the pot with. I can always ask for those and negotiate those back instead of just asking for them when we've already got a deal. So what that deal ended up being is they made 4 months payments. They left, I don't know how many pieces of furniture and all kinds of stuff. I had to get a U-Haul and a motorcycle outside.
So do you just go sell this stuff and then that cash?
Yeah, and basically I can, the last subject to I got a car out of it. But my son needed a car, so I was like, I'm not paying for a car, I'm just going to get a car.
Negotiate into a deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you don't, honestly, is this getting creative for some? I got a boat out of a house in Lacombe, right? That was a John boat on a trailer, and that little thing, I had to dig it out of the backyard and air up the tires and took it to some family land in Mississippi. But hey, it was a piece of the pie, right? Sold it for I don't know, close to $1,000 or something like that. I'm like, cool, right? But here's the thing is, it can sweeten the pot, but when this is learning how to really structure deals and put the deal together, and the reason why that's important is everyone walked away from this deal. How did you make money on this deal?
This one was
Obviously,
really,
you sold the jet ski, a
Well, yeah.
motorcycle, whatever.
this one was really, this one's kind of one of these hybrids that just take all kind of different ways over time. So what happened with this particular one is, I put a lease option tenant buyer in there for 119, got $5 grand down. So I'm already $5 grand into that, how much whatever it was in
Yeah, because
spread.
they paid the four
First
months of
payment.
payments.
And it was
So you didn't have any bills due for 4 months.
And they also, I made sure that the guy was a handyman, so I had him fix everything, paint everything was moved in, I didn't do anything to the house. So, that was part of the deal, 4 months payment.
How do you guys feel like you need to negotiate better, right? You're like, dang.
Well, I think a lot of people, what they don't do is I always ask them, what do they do? Because when they say they do drywall, when they paint, when they do something else, oh, well, part of the deal now is I've got a house over here that needs painting. You see what I'm saying? So that's always.
Why do they need you if they have 4 months of payments?
No, they were moving from Ocean Springs to Diamond Head, and they just didn't want to eat 2 payments, but they saw eating 2 payments for a short period of time was better than just trying to put it on the market and not know.
And think about that, 109, they owe 96, between the time you have concessions, closing costs, commissions, I mean, they could already be taking a loss at that point, right?
So this is a deal
It's a known controllable situation versus an unknown. And here's something really important. The relief of pain is far greater than the potential of pleasure, right? Meaning, if you can take out that what if, that all these things, this is why it becomes a very easy sell.
Yeah, so this particular one, I'll get to you just one second. I want to finish out this because if not,
You're gonna lose it?
Big trails, yeah. So on this particular one, $4,800 in payments I didn't have to make. I got $5,000 down from the lease option tenant buyers. I think the motorcycle was $2,500 I paid, and whatever. I think I kept all the furniture. I was moving into a larger home, and we just kept the furniture. So this one played out a little odd. So at the time, a year was it? I do my lease options in a manner where.
So lease option is where someone locks in the ability to buy a property and then they lease it from you. And
with
you
an
give
option
them,
to buy later.
Yeah, so while they're renting, they put money down to be able to lock in a purchase price for a set period.
For 119, I do 119. I had the payments. I don't know, a couple $100 more. No, I think I had it at $1,500. I was paying $1,200 on the note, and they paid $1,200 4 times. So I do my lease options for a 2-year lease option where after the end of the first year, the rent goes up 10%. So at the end of the first year, they decided to move out, and they just told me really apologetically, hey, they found another property, they're going to move on. And I said, great.
So they already paid $5,000 down, and okay, so that happens sometimes with lease options. So this one did work out weird, where you got to double dip and all that.
Yes, but normally when you do this, the best scenario out of all the investing I've ever done over 20 years is you buy subject to or you acquire subject to, and you lease option. Acquire the lease option until you get into a hot market, and then you just acquire and sell as fast as you can. Especially this market, it's crazy.
Let's talk about that really quick. When it comes to subject to, I don't care to own a subject to for a rental. I just don't care for it.
Yeah. Not a long term, unless you're looking at refining.
Not unless you're looking to change that financing in place, because there's some downfalls, and let's go into some of the downfalls as far as.
Yeah, a question in the back? I'm trying to remember who it was.
Yeah, what happens if you don't make a payment?
Well, there's 2 golden rules to subject to. One is verify your assumptions and make the payment.
So what's the verify your assumptions?
If you don't make the payment.
Well, it's their credit.
So you see, you never submitted your credit. It's not going to be on your credit score. Like when someone pulls your credit score, they're not seeing someone else's loan on there, right?
Yeah.
Bob's loan's not on my, literally, Bob, if you have a loan in your house, it's not on my credit right now. There's just no way it's going to ever end up that way unless
We can fix that.
we can fix that.
So Justin, it ends up back
After
on
you lend me all your cash.
it ends up back on the original owner.
So the loan is always with the original borrower, right?
Correct.
So what's the assurance you give them? that
I don't.
You're gonna make that.
I do just the opposite. And I tell them and I have them notarize it. I may not make the payments. Now, I know in my part, I'm going to make it before I make my own mortgage payment. But I want to make sure in front of a notary that they, well, we'll go through I've got a CYA 2-page that is pretty blunt.
So the reason why this is really key is, one, verify your assumptions.
Which is normally going to be, what are you taking subject to? What are the
What's the
terms? What are you
mortgage?
thinking?
Do your due
If you
diligence on that.
Yeah, if it's like you're buying a property without getting a home inspection, right? It's almost like if you're buying a property sight unseen, because you really don't know what's on the title, everything is behind what you saw on just a mortgage statement.
So why do a subject to if you couldn't, why wouldn't you just lease option it?
You mean lease from them?
Yeah.
I want the tax benefits.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
It sweetens the deal even more. And part of the deal that I do too is, like I say, if it's at the end of the year, November, December, I work out a deal with the seller where I'll take the mortgage interest for the entire year, and they'll agree to that.
yeah, so if you don't understand the value of that, understand that that is very key when you start making more money.
Especially that's another way to make a slim deal not so slim.
Yes, if I can have more, like I can get a 1098 form or whatever from the bank on the interest, all that. So we'll go over some of that, because I know I'm gonna have you share about the tax parts when it comes to subject to. So here's the thing is, every different creative strategy has different pros and cons. When we're talking with the seller here, we're gonna be very honest what we're doing. This is no sleight of hand, this is no, look, do you understand that I'm gonna be taking over these payments, but do you understand, they're gonna say, okay, well, how soon are you gonna pay it off? I may never pay it off, right? Here's what I used to say, I'll say, just go ahead and assume it's gonna go all the way to the end of the mortgage. Let's just say it's day one on the 30 year, right?
That's what the question you'll get is, how long are you gonna make the payments? And my answer is always, how long do you want me to make the payments? Forever.
Well, until
that's
the
what
end of
I'm
the
gonna be
mortgage,
making.
right? Okay, so we're gonna say that. The other thing is gonna say,
Well, and here's the thing, the reason why you need to really be transparent with them, because if they don't truly understand or feel that you're transparent and honest with them, where do you think they're gonna go? Google.
Yeah.
They're gonna go to Google and YouTube. And is there negative things about subject to? Of course there are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna tell them, hey, if you Google subject to, there's gonna be some really crazy stuff out there. And this is another thing, this is another reason why I very much advocate being licensed as a real estate agent. Because I say, if I'm gonna do something unethical, I can lose my real estate license. I wouldn't wanna do that.
Yeah, so.
It makes it a bigger
no,
pro, it gives them
kinda-
more ease.
Sure. First of all, if you're doing subject to, you need to talk to your broker. You need to talk to your broker.
Well,
Any strategy you're doing real estate wise, you need to talk to your broker if you're not the broker. Okay, so the other parts we're talking with the seller. They're going to ask that often. Hey, how long are you going to be making those payments? Because maybe they like this short term as an answer. A lot of them, they're gonna be like, yeah, I want to buy a house in a few years. Or hey.
well, and two, if you talk to, a mortgage guy and the banker guy. So what I'm saying too is when they have a subject to, it's like they've sold the property owner financing, right? So it's not going to count toward their debt to income ratios like just.
So an objection could be,
Yeah.
wait,
they
I
can
need
still
to
buy.
move somewhere else. Can I buy? When can I buy a new house?
Yeah. Now I've only had it a few times where.
Buy a new house.
Yeah.
They can, because if you think about it, whenever you've got this mortgage still in your name, so the issue here is that they're afraid that their income's not going to be able to manage two mortgages, right?
But they'll be able to show that the payments are being made because you have a purchase and sale contract that says
Yeah,
that
paperwork, yeah.
you're buying a property subject to. And if they've sold the property because they can see the HUD, and on the HUD, there's a line that says subject to financing on the HUD.
So this actually goes to a closing table.
It doesn't have to. You can, or it's up to you.
You use it
It depends on the seller. If the seller's really kind of,
They want the I's dotted. and the
yeah,
T's
if I
crossed.
don't feel like that I've got them all the way, that in trust, I'll say that, hey, when I write the earnest money check, I'm going to write it to the title company and we'll close in a week after they run title. But if they're not, if they're like, they don't care, they just emotionally done with the property, I'm just going to go to a credit union, we'll do the notary right there and we're done.
So
After you
I'm
run
gonna say
title
this: if you're not used to doing some of these, I wouldn't suggest. Don't go do this with a notary. Do it with a title company
that understands subject to.
that understands subject to. Here's the thing: is that so you do want to have. So the conversations with the seller here is you want to find out. You want to get paperwork from them. Their very most recent statement.
Deed.
You want to get. So I go to public record and I pull up the recording of the mortgage, and I start reading through it. I'm scrolling through it, taking notes, and oh, that's what, I need to ask about this, or look into this, or okay, this is the terms, this is what I'm looking into.
What I do instead of
What do
doing
you do?
that is, I get an authorization to release information signed when I'm doing all the stuff, up
That's in your,
front.
do you have that in your
It
packet?
is, so it's an
So what is
authorization.
that?
It's basically just giving, the seller giving me the authorization to talk to the bank on their behalf. So
If
I'll
I-
call the bank and I say, look, I'm looking to take over property management of the property. I need to make sure that the only mortgage on this property is this, is an adjustable rate, is it this, is that? Can you send me any kind of documentation, and they'll just email it to me.
He said something very critical there, and we'll get to these questions. He said, I'm looking to take over the property management, like the management of the property, right? Did he just say, hey, did he call the bank and say, hey, I'm taking over this mortgage, I am gonna be the new payment maker?
That fits in their ear a lot easier, right?
Okay,
They
do you
understand.
understand how, that is, here's the thing is, when you talk industry lingo and do some things, it's gonna go over sellers' heads, it's gonna go over other people, or the confused mind says no, right? When people don't understand, subject to, that's illegal, you can't do that, okay? Talk to my attorney who signs all of my contracts to do these. I mean, like, we've gone through these things, right? So to understand that was a very key nugget right there. When he called the bank, he said, hey, I'm taking over the management of this property. They're gonna ask for this authorization to release information form. You can get these if you've ever done like a short sale, if you've ever done any type of talking to someone. Look, I can't call your bank and say, hey, I need to talk to you about Justin. They're gonna be like, we don't talk about our clients with people, right? Especially not their mortgages, their account, any of that, right? This authorization release is very specific to the actual mortgage. It's not their whole accounts or anything like that. It's just being able to talk about the mortgage, and the bank is going to want to verify it. You usually have to fax it, scan it in, whatever.
Yeah.
So most loans have a clause that say it's not assumable. How is subject to different?
You're not assuming
You're
the
not-
loan?
Yeah, you're not.
Assuming the loan is you're qualifying to basically take on the loan as far as the existing terms and just fulfilling their loan. You're not getting a new loan, you're replacing them in the loan. This, you're not in the loan at all. You're still on the outside saying, I've got the deed, I own the property, but the loan is still going to be in the seller's name.
Am I right in saying it's kind of like an unrecorded bond for deed?
Okay, so
Well, there's a few different ways that I do that based on.
I do a
the
technical
scenarios.
bond for deed where my monthly payments. So very rarely do I put money up for a subject to. Sometimes I do, but let's just say the mortgage is $1,000 a month payment, principal and interest. Let's just say that's their PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is $1,000 a month, and it's a $100,000 mortgage, and they're current on the mortgage, right? They're not behind a few payments. If I agree to take this over, the bond for deed is going to be a $100,000 purchase price with monthly payments of $1,000 going to the bank. You see? So I'm not making, I rarely ever, actually never make excess payments, right? Sometimes you can build that in, but I'm often solving the problem here, okay? And so I do it as a bond for deed, where we have the agreement of when the title is going to transfer to me. But again, I don't like to keep subject to's over 2 years. So I'm really just, whether I'm flipping it, whether I'm lease optioning it, refinancing it, whatever. So I do record it. This one, the way, not this one, but this version style.
Well, no, I do it differently. I do it sometimes that way too. So it's a different scenario. So if you don't have a hot market like you do now, you normally would want to acquire the property subject to and lease option it out, a year or two, and then they don't buy, and you put somebody else in there a couple years and a couple more years, and you keep just collecting $5,000 and $6,000 every time you do
What's
that.
your ideal term of the lease option? How long?
2 years. I normally do 2 years with a 1 year 10% increase in rent.
And so what does that do? If you increase it 10% for a lease option on the back end, what does that incentivize them to do?
Yeah.
To buy you out in the first year. So a lease option, they're locking in the ability to buy the property, right, while they rent it from you. So the reason for him, hey, they're giving you 2 years to do it. The second year rents this much more. Well, what are they going to hustle to do? right? Incentivize them towards what you want them to do.
I'm gonna tell you, out of 100, I've only had 2 actually do it.
Actually go through and buy it out. And here's the thing is that we go through and we vet people we want them to be able to buy it. So we're not just doing it to people who can't, but it's like, at the end of the day, it's a weird phenomenon.
No, I'll
I don't know
explain
how to
the
explain.
phenomenon. I don't understand. I'll tell you why. So the average time between you selling your house and moving to somebody else across the board, across the country is, it used to be 7 years, it's now 6 years, right? So the reason why
So the
it's
lifespan of
6
living in a
years,
home is-
living in a home before you go somewhere else, new job, something happens in your family, you know, you need more room, need less room, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, on the average is 6 years. The reason why it's not less is because it's a pain in the ass to sell your house and get it fixed up and everything else. Let's say if it wasn't any problem like that, you'd probably have it closer to 4 years. If you're lease optioning it every 2 years, how much closer are you to that 4? Where they just go, you know what, I want to be in a different location, I want to be here, and then they don't have to sell anything. It's just like they're renting.
You mean
All they're doing is
after
they're
2
giving up
years
the
they
flat
come back
rate.
to you and they say, hey, I need some more time?
And, well, no, they either say they want more time, which is not necessarily the case, then normally something happens. They've got a new girlfriend, a new boyfriend, new job, they don't want to be in that neighborhood, they don't like the
Credit
neighbor,
change.
whatever, they don't know, but they're mostly, I would say 60-70% of the time, they're apologetic about it. They're like, I know you thought I was going to buy the house, and I know, you know, all this kind of stuff, but we're just going to have to, you know, I think we're just going to have to not do it and just move out at the end of the month.
So is that deposit
Non-refundable.
Non-refundable? So what makes you determine, how do you determine the 5,000, why not 10?
There's a point to where you seem to be taking advantage over somebody when they're lease optioning. So if you're selling, if I'm buying, I want to buy owner financing. I want to take
So this
subject
is your
to
hierarchy.
right? I'm going to start with owner financing, subject to agreement for deed or bond for deed, lease option, cash.
So these are all the
right?
ways he wants. He wants owner financing,
Owner
he
financing
wants
first.
subject to, he wants, then you want
Agreement
bond
for
for
deed.
deed,
Yeah, bond
agreement
for
for deed
deed.
in Mississippi.
And then
Lease option, and then cash.
Cash.
You want to buy properties cash last. You want to go through all those other ones. So for me, I like going through all the different options. For me, subject to would be, it would probably be lower than a bond for deed for me. So it's just being comfortable with those things, right? When you understand the strategy more, you have more comfort of like, man, I'd like to do more of these versus those. So
on the flip side, though, when you're selling, I want to do just the opposite. Start at lease option, right? And then you go agreement. Now, if they got 5,000, that's lease option. If they have 15 or 20,000, now that's agreement for deed. If they want to do owner financing, that's more than 20 grand. You know what I'm saying? So the more money they have to put down, the more control that they get for that. But the reason why I do it is if I ever go, this is my kind of like the plan B, right? So every deal I do, I say, like, if I look at the paperwork, what I've told the sellers, what I've got in writing, any kind of conversations, if I have to go before a judge, am I good with going there and winning that hands down, right? So the judge is always going to look at it. If you do a lease option and then somebody put down 25 grand, they're probably not going to give you the ability to keep that 25 grand non-refundable because it looks like you're taking advantage of them in a lease option situation. Now, if you owner financed it, that's on them. So you have to watch.
you see how he would structure it differently?
So normally I'd say 5% out of 100 grand, right? About 5% as far as a lease option would be.
What's your thoughts for subject to on a market that might be shifting? Like we've been on this like uphill.
Every market can do subject to.
So if we do it one now when the market's really high and say it plummets in 2 years when the lease option is.
Let's talk about the nasty sides of subject to, okay? And then we can go through let's go through the paperwork and then
I know this is gonna be a lot.
Say 25.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the nasty sides of subject to in the sense of what do we think we see coming, anything like that. Are there any scenarios in which, again, we talked about that you wouldn't do subject to, you said?
I think the only time that you see that subject to is going to be one of these it wouldn't be so quick out of the holster for you is that if interest rates went to plus 6%, and the reason for it is what's funny to me is that when I started doing SubTo back in the early 2000s, everything was at 6, 8, 9, 12% interest, and I was like, woohoo, I just got free money, I didn't have to go to the bank for it. And like now everything's 3%, it's crazy, and it's been that way for a decade. You know, so everything's super cheap. And then they've been paying down on it for 6 or 8 years. So if interest rates go to plus 6%, they're going to be looking for ways to call those loans in at 3% and move that money back out at 6, right?
Robert and I were talking about that. So Robert's a lender. That's one of my fears that I have. The lowest.
Servicing companies own it by now? Like, wouldn't it be sold off these days?
So okay.
Yeah. It's rare. I mean, they're not going to like every SubTo.
So
No.
all of your home loans are not like, you know, at jeopardy of being called,
No.
right? If you just refinance and got those low ones. Here's the thing is, we don't know what the future is going to hold in this market with this economy. There's all these things happening. But if the banks are starting to hurt at a level that they're going to be trying to plug the holes in the boat, they may look to call some of these loans due that are at the low interest rates to try to hedge against issues. That is something that SubTo investors do talk. We've been talking about it. It's a possibility. This is why you need multiple exit strategies with your SubTo deal. Meaning, can you go refinance it? Can you, I know some people don't take on that opinion, right? Can you sell it quickly? So whenever the loan got called on Pat's one in Mississippi, the community bank learned about it. They called him up. They called the loan due. He was already preparing to sell it on the market. It was under contract.
Now, see, this is what we kind of got off into a picture of here, but when I was saying that when it's not in a good market, right? So when you're in a good market like this, I don't record the deed. I get the deed signed. I get everything ready to go. I just don't go and record the deed. And the reason for it is that when I go to sell it, I don't want 6 months FHA hurdle on me for seasoning.
So if any of you do flips, you understand when a property gets sold, you typically need to wait a while before a new
loan can be
put on their FHA. So that's a strategy there.
But see, the reason why I do this, and this is how I get around it, which is the reason why I think it's a hybrid model of SubTo that I think solves your problem of the reason why you don't like doing SubTos, and would probably put a lot of people at ease. The reason because they're not going to call property SubTo unless actually the old seller calls the bank and says this is what happened, right? So the only way they're going to be able to do that is to go look in the courthouse and see the deed actually transferred. But if you never recorded the deed, then it didn't happen. But if you recorded an option to purchase the property with a 50-year expiration,
An option
then all you need to do is control the title work. If something weird happens with the property, you're in the mix. So if somebody needs, so an option is basically just you're buying the property with an option to purchase it over a period of time to a certain period of time with a certain
expiration.
with an expiration
in terms.
with specific terms labeled out.
Think of the lease option. It's a lease and it's an option. The option is saying, hey, so it's not a deposit, right? Because you think that's refundable. We say, hey, money up front locks in the ability to buy this over the 2 years you're renting here. Where else can you do that?
So this is what I have done in a hot market, and really it solves a lot of the issues that couldn't come up, which I think will solve some of the stuff you're talking about. So what I do is when I get a SubTo deal, I also get the option paperwork. So now when I go to list the property and sell it, I'm not on deed and I don't do a double close. I can do a double close, but I don't do a double close. Because I've already explained to the seller that I could have you come back and sell to my end buyer again. And I collect the middle after I do repairs, after I meet appraisal, after I deal with all the buyer stuff, and they're cool with it. Because I've explained it up front.
Because you explained up front, you've had sellers come back.
Yeah. The majority of the time, the last 2 years, the majority of the time, that's what happens.
So then they come back and help you sell it to someone on the back end.
So they're gonna sell it twice. They're gonna sell it to me that nobody knows about,
And they're
and
going
they're gonna
to,
sell it to my end buyer once I've figured out the best exit strategy. If I think they need to enter into the picture again.
so if you're a flipper and you're like, I need more money, I need more deals, things like that, this is a great option for you because if you can understand the moving parts, what you can do is, let's say, okay, we did one in Hammond. They owed $138,000 on the loan. Paul, was it 179? Worth 179. Rents, I don't know, 1,400, something like that. Cash, that deal doesn't work, right? If you run your numbers, it needed a good cleanup. It needed the AC serviced. I think a microwave. It was for sure needed a good cleanup. They were nasty, but here's the thing: is the monthly payments are like $1,100 a month. Well, crap! If I'm going to be paying a private lender money, could this be a form of financing for me? Think of it like that. If I'm going to make monthly payments, and then I'm going to prepare it, and then I put it on the market and sell it, is this now an opportunity for you to be able to acquire properties? And does this potentially solve some of your money problems, right? You no longer need to raise the 138 or have the 138. You just need what it needs to maybe make the payments, the utilities, those
And
holding
sometimes,
costs.
if you work out the deal right, they'll make those payments.
Yeah, the seller can make some payments for you. And so then you're like, man, I've only got 10,000. I've only got 20,000. Can I invest in real estate? You bet your bottom you can. It's just you need more tools in your tool belt.
What's your script for getting them to pay that 3 months, 4 months?
It depends on the equity. If they've got 30, 40,000 in equity, I'm not pulling that hat.
And then it's also one of the things here, so sometimes the sellers are behind on payments.
Yeah, which is, now I think that's probably the easiest subject to transaction, because if they're 3-4 months behind, here's the situation when it comes to that, because if they go into foreclosure, right, it's only gonna get worse,
Their
right?
credit's already taking a hit right now.
Yeah, so what happens is, you're coming in on a white horse saying, hey, I'm gonna straighten out your credit, because from now on, your payments will be made, and you'll want the loan in your name for the next 2 years, because now it's gonna show history that was
Someone's
just a
making
bump in the
payments
road.
on your behalf, right?
Right.
Consistent one-time payments?
You don't want them to be behind 3 or 4 months and then a sale. You want that loan to continue and work that kink out. And you're the one that's gonna work the kink out for them.
So,
But if it's a tight deal and they're 3-4 months behind, now they've gotta come up with some other kind of stuff to sweeten the pot. Or if you just know it's gonna be a great deal and they've got great equity, they're just behind the payments. And, I've had it to where, okay, I'll give you $5,000 and you're out. And now I'll take it from there. The one I just did a car on last year, she owed 48. A realtor came in and said, we need to list it right now for 89. She didn't list it. I bought it for $5,000. I gave her $5,000. Take over the payments of $560 a month, whatever it was. And then I knew that I was gonna put this on the market, so I wasn't just gonna be a long-term thing. I said, whenever it sells, that's when your loan will be paid off. They just wanted to be moving out on, it's like 60 days from then. They were moving to Vegas. And they just wanted to move out on this date, and they didn't have to deal with anything.
so if they did with the realtor, they didn't have control over
They didn't
that.
have that idea, so they were too tight on the
So,
money.
relief of that pain, right? Do you see how people get stressed out about that? Oh, when am I gonna have to move out? Is that gonna line up perfectly in a perfect world between listing it on the market?
Yeah.
And so you see how the relief of that pain opened up the opportunity. So when you hear some of these things, be like, hey, I have an option here. What if we looked at this?
So what I did with this one is I ended up telling, this is the spouse, they had a car, a Toyota Scion, that they said, well, they were going to be looking. I said, are you going to be, flying? How are you going to move there? And they were saying, well, we're just going to take that car and then we're just going to go. We'll probably sell that one or whatever. I said, well, I'll tell you what, if I give you $5,000, will you just leave the car and we'll work that into the deal? And they're all like, sure. So I got the car, I gave them $5,000. So the payoff was 48. I put 17 in it and sold it for 120.
Catch up to
Subject
almost
to.
4,800?
There was no catch-up. They were
current.
current. They paid the next 2 months while they were living there.
So real quick, I want to do this because we're getting close on time. So we've got, and this will be on there, authorization letter to release information. This is what the bank is going to need to be able to talk to you. There's a lot more to go into here, but if there's other loans, if there's a second mortgage, you need to know that. So
Just
this
get
is
two of
one,
those.
you need one per loan.
Yeah.
Oh, this is for the insurance.
Yeah.
You're changing, so this is his paperwork with the insurance. Let's go over that real quick. How do you address insurance? Because right now, if you're taking over this property, you're getting control. What if the house catches on fire? Who's going to get the money from that insurance check? Katrina happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something like that.
Well, it's a perfect example because the house that I just did the car with, Hurricane Zeta happened.
Yep.
Right, in the middle of me trying to sell it, and we were already under contract to sell. So what's interesting here is that the way my paperwork works is I also have a limited power of attorney, right, which is also in there. And it spells out that if an insurance check comes in, which comes to my address, that I have the authority to go to that bank and cash it in their name. I just sign on the back, blah, 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 whatever the bank wanted me to do at the time. So I don't have it. So what I do is I go to the authorization letter. I send over to the insurance company.